All right, good evening, everybody. Since it's 6:34, I'm going to call the open meeting to order. I want to read a brief statement first. Welcome to Francis House School District Board of Education meeting. The purpose of this meeting is to celebrate our successes and showcase our talented students and staff, as well as to conduct business of the district, hear reports about progress on key initiatives, and listen to community on important issues. The Francis House School District Board of Education is committed to the safety and security of all of our students, staff, parents, and patrons. We have reports to consider and business to conduct that are critical to the functioning of our school district. We want to remind all of our visitors that we expect the audience to remain civil and respectful at all times as the board conducts its business. Calling out verbal aggressiveness, inappropriate language, or name calling is not acceptable. If the meeting becomes unruly, the board may take a recess until such time the audience is appropriate. If inappropriate behavior continues by individuals, they will be asked to leave the meeting. If the audience becomes so inappropriate in their behavior that we cannot conduct our business, the board reserves the right to adjourn the meeting. We appreciate your cooperation and then that you took the time to come to tonight's meeting. With that said, I would like to have the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, board, I would like a motion to approve the agenda for April 21st, 2022 as presented. We have a first by Chad Lang and a second by Patrick Lane. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Now turn it over to Jen Jules for special recognitions.
Thank you, Mr. Zivire. We have 3 recognitions for you this evening. First up, we'd like to recognize Erica Bowen, a paraprofessional at Hollenbeck Middle School, who was recently named Paraprofessional of the Year by the Missouri Council for Exceptional Children. This award recognizes paraprofessionals for their exemplary practice of assisting students with disabilities. And here from Hollenbeck to tell you a bit more about our honoree is Principal Woody Bordschulte. Come on up, Woody.
Thank you. First, I'd like to thank the Board of Education, Dr. Hovind, and the entire cabinet for allowing me this opportunity to recognize and celebrate Mrs. Erica Bowen. Erica has been with the Essential Skills program at Hollenbeck Middle School since 2018. She is reliable, skilled, rarely misses work, and is always punctual. She's responsible, follows all directives, shares ideas to improve student learning and behavior, and volunteers whenever and wherever needed. Erica is kind and caring. She helps support our highest needs essential skills students and also our highest needs behavior students in our resource setting. Erica is always calm, consistent when working with students, builds strong relationships with some of our most demanding and difficult students, and is always respectful to her co-workers. She's respected by all at Hollenbeck Middle School. Erica is an asset to our school and to our district. She will make an excellent special educator once she completes her degree and receives certification. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my honor to introduce Missouri's Professional of the Year, Mrs. Erica Bowen.
That's the best.
Thank you.
All right, next up, we'd like to recognize an exceptionally ambitious student from Francis House Central who, on our own initiative, launched a new youth advisory task force within the City of St. Charles government. Ms. Taya Perez serves as a chairperson and works hand in hand with the mayor and student representatives from 6 area high schools to elicit positive change in the city. I'd like to invite Assistant Principal Ashley Mayer to the podium to tell you a little bit more about Taya.
Good evening. One of my favorite things to do is honor our most amazing students, and Taya is no exception to that. She is so impressive for so many reasons, but amongst her efforts in this initiative, she has been able to orchestrate a Clean Stream event in St. Charles, along with the Parks Department. Currently, she is working on commissioning student artists to do murals in Frenchtown, which is amazing. And she also, if you want to learn more about her, is featured in the St. Charles newsletter monthly with all of her efforts that she's working on amongst all the wonderful things that she's already accomplished. Long term, Taya is working to attend Emerson College in Boston next year, where she will major in journalism. She already does such wonderful things for our publications department, and she'll minor in theater when she's also involved in at FHC. She attributes her success to those two organizations and called them home when I asked her earlier, what did she love so much about FHC? So it's awesome to hear that she has found not one, but two really cool places to connect with everybody and make a change not only in our school, but for the community. So please help me welcome and congratulate Taya Perez.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mayer. And for our final recognition of the evening, we have the honor of recognizing the Francis Howell High School Golden Girls dance team, who recently clinched their first ever national championship. You can watch their award-winning performance this Saturday morning at 9 a.m. on ESPNU. And I'd like to invite Activities Director Sean Irwin to the podium to tell you more about the Golden Girls and introduce our guests.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight and be in front of you and to celebrate this very talented group of girls that we've had the pleasure of being around for the past couple of years. This year was definitely a historic season for our Francis Howell Golden Girls dance program. It's a program that for the past couple of years has been recognized as one of the top high school dance programs in the country. They've won state championships, have finished in the Final Four, and have also finished in the top 10 nationally. This year they made history when they won the UDA National Championship. It's the first time in program history, first national championship in Francis Howell history, and also in district history. So a major accomplishment for the program. The Golden Girls won the national championship for their hip hop routine, and they also finished 10th in the nation for their jazz routine. This year, our Golden Girls also finished second in Class 6 at state. Not only are they successful dancing on the floor, but they also hold a cumulative GPA over the course of their high school careers over 3.6. So very proud of that as well. So at this time, I'd like to recognize the dance members that were able to attend tonight. First of all, coaches to my left, Lena Wimmer and Lindsay George. Seniors Anna Crawford, Ashlyn Ricketson. Juniors Kylie Brader, Taylor Forsyth, Liv Morey, Hannah Cohen, and Addison Shallow. Sophomores Aubrey Moore and Abby Hilson. And freshmen Mara Duffin and Anna Shear. Again, girls that weren't able to be here tonight were Kenzie Beckman, Gabrielle Montellano, Paige Opperman, and Campbell Fox. Again, congratulations to this group.
I do want to briefly extend a big thank you to Dr. Hogan and the board because last year in our season of COVID between athletics and the educational school year, you allowed us the opportunity to attend our national championship and make strides towards this goal. And so if it weren't for you, and of course we give a lot of the thanks to the dancers, but if it weren't for the school board and if it weren't for Francis Hall, we wouldn't have been able to be there. So we really do appreciate it. Thank you.
Amazing. That's going to be a hard one to follow. But I'd like to introduce April Burton, Instructional Technology Content Leader, who will lead our best practice presentation on blended learning.
Thank you. I probably need to move this down. Good evening, and thank you so much for this opportunity to share with you this very exciting and innovative approach to learning that we're offering in our 3 high schools. To really better prepare our students for success after high school. So as Jennifer said, I am one of the instructional technology content leaders in the district. And blended learning, by definition, is a combination of in-class, face-to-face learning mixed with learning opportunities that take place online, supported by digital tools. So put simply, blended learning is engaged learning with digital tools, along with engaged learning without the use of digital tools, and it actually can happen at all levels. But this year, we've had an innovative opportunity to offer flexible blended learning courses at our high schools. And so what this means is our teachers work with their students to create a very personalized plan for when students should report to class and when they may work on their own asynchronously outside of the classroom. So that might mean they are able to come into school a little bit later, maybe leave school a little earlier, or they may be allowed to work in designated areas in the building, working at their own pace towards their own learning goals. So our journey actually started in the 18-19 school year when several of our high school administrators and district admin visited a school in Naperville, Illinois, along with a school in Millard, Nebraska. And they really went to research some best practices and innovative ways that high schools in the Midwest were doing things. And they saw firsthand how empowering blended learning can be for allowing our students to really make strong choices in their learning. And then after that trip, they came back with lots of ideas of how we could implement this in Francis Howell. So we developed a plan, and by the end of April 2020, which remember we weren't even face-to-face learning at that time, we had designated already our first class of teachers that were like, yes, I want to learn about this, I want to innovate my practice. And I have had the pleasure of working with this group of teachers since the summer of 2020 through this school year, as we have learned from other school districts. We have gone through a coaching plan, and we've really adopted some best practices for blended learning in our high school classes. So this year, we have offered 13 classes in our pilot program through all 3 buildings, with the intention of growing this program every year after. So we've actually identified our next class of teachers who have started professional development. They're mentored under the teachers who were in our pilot group, and they're continuing to learn, and they're prepared to extend some blended learning classes in our classrooms in our high schools next year. So we've learned from other school districts, from our own learning this year, that blended learning has a lot of benefits for our students. This flexible opportunity allows our students to have small group instruction, so teachers can pull in students and target the exact needs that they have. It allows teachers to conference with students one-to-one, to really have meaningful conversations and provide intentional feedback to help students. It allows for intervention and enrichment opportunities, because we all know that students often are all in different places, and we don't have to wait for that summative exam to know what students are getting it and what students aren't. We're able to really intervene when students might need some extra support, or when students are ready to move on. And the students will tell you they're the most excited about the last 2 bullet points. They're excited to be able to take that responsibility of their own learning and to be able to have more like a guided college and career experience, because they get to make choices on their learning. So our work in learning about blended learning and in adopting these strategies has really been focused on personalization, collaboration, and agency. And as we adopt our practices for this blended environment, we are focusing on these pillars of the learning process to really empower our students to become independent learners who can make the best choices for their learning, recognizing that after they leave us, they're going to be making these choices when they're in college, and so this helps to guide them to be able to make the best choices for themselves. And blended learning is an innovative practice that it's not something that's been around. Blended learning has, but the flexible option that we're offering is relatively new. And so a lot of times there's misconceptions about what blended learning is. And so just to dispel some of those myths, blended learning is certainly not online learning. I know a lot of our families participated in virtual learning when we were post-pandemic. And this is really very different than virtual learning. While we do use technology as part of the process, a focus of our flexible blended learning courses is that collaboration with the teacher, collaboration with classmates, and so that is a foundational component. It also doesn't mean that students don't have to be in class. In fact, if you ask the students, they'll tell you they're in class more often than they're not, but it means that they may make some choices. Today I need to be in class because I need specific help from my teacher. Or the teacher may decide rotations where in order to split the class and focus on specific needs. And we also recognize that it's not a solution for all learners all the time. There are some students who have been waiting their entire life to be able to make these personalized decisions for their learning. And then there are other students who they need that scaffolding, they need that direction. And so blended learning is an option for our students, and it may not be the best choice for all students. But those students who need more direction, our teachers are there to provide it for them. So I wanted to share with you some of the anecdotes and some of the things that our current pilot blended teachers are saying and some of our students. So Matt Gearing, who is a science teacher at Howell High School, he was reporting that his 10th grade blended students are making better choices and submitting higher quality of work on their own. And Jennifer Beckman Brown, also at Howell High School, she was commenting about how her students are really self-reflecting and making that connection between effort and that real, authentic learning of the content. Emily Harris, who actually teaches 2 blended sections, she has an AP Stats section, and then her Algebra 2 section, they switched. First semester is a traditional class, and then second semester they switched it to a blended class. And she teaches statistics, so she has a ton of data. But her students actually were improving by an entire letter grade because she was able to have these small group sessions and really help the students to have these strong, meaningful conversations about math. And I've been in her classroom and I've seen these discussions, and it's amazing. And then Amy Stoker, who teaches AP Lit at Francistown North, was talking about how her blended class allows for that personalized feedback that students need when preparing for the AP exam. And so it really makes that conferencing very meaningful. So we interviewed a few students, and you'll have to forgive the audio on here, but this is what some of our students are saying about blended learning.
I just like about blended learning, like the freedom that we get, just how we get to do like our school from anywhere.
I love blended learning because I like freedom we get and the flexibility the teachers allow to at any conference.
I think students should enroll in a blended learning course just because I think it's like a good experience because it'll prepare you for like what you're going to do in college, for the exam.
I think students should enroll in a blended learning class because it'll prepare you for college and it'll also just kind of get you comfortable with testing your limits and like knowing personally what you work better in, like environment-wise, like if you work better than in school. It's really neat.
I appreciate the opportunity to share with you this absolutely exciting endeavor that we've ventured on this year. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Ms. Burton, you might have mentioned this. If you did, I apologize. How many students I know you said there are 16 teachers that were teaching it. How many students are utilizing this program?
Oh, goodness.
Approximately.
So we have 13 classes. I have to have some math people help me out. We've got, on average, 25 to even 30 in some of those sections. So
Quite a few.
And that's just in our pilot year. We intentionally wanted to start small to make sure that we rolled this out in the right way. And then next year, we're expanding it from the 13 classes that we have this year to just over about 20 more sections, or 20 sections total.
And one teacher saw 10% improvement in her class just switching in one semester.
In one semester.
That's amazing.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Board, any other questions or comments? Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Before we get on to patron comments, I want to just briefly mention, I failed to at the beginning, why I'm the one that's leading the meeting. Our president, Mary Lane, is actually a little bit under the weather, so she's actually FaceTiming in. So she's here, she's going to be voting and listening to everything. Just wanted to kind of make a reference to that in case you guys were wondering. But now we're on to patron comments. Just want to read real briefly. During patron comments, citizens are invited to address the Board of Education concerning issues related to the school district. Speakers are called forward in order of sign up, and each speaker has 3 minutes to make their remarks. Please remember that only one speaker is allowed at a time at the podium, and combining time or giving your time to someone else is not permitted. The board appreciates that you have taken the time to come this evening, and we value both your input and your perspective. I would like to remind everyone that we expect speakers will remain civil and respectful when giving remarks, and if anyone becomes disruptive, we reserve the right to cut those 3 minutes short. Verbally aggressive language and vulgarity in any form is not acceptable and will not be tolerated. For your convenience, our 3-minute time clock is ready. So our first speaker is Bill McGee.
Good evening. One of my children is in a 6th grade English class within the Francis House School District, and I'm going to take you on a tiny journey of that class thus far. Let's talk books. I have flagged at least 14 problem books, but only have time to hit the worst of the worst. Note, no parents are alerted about any of these books. The teacher showcases each of these books with a synopsis video. They are for a grade, and the teacher personally advocates each one of them. Let's start with climate activism. Greta's story, the schoolgirl who went on strike. This inspiring true story of Greta Thunberg. How to change everything, a long-awaited guide for climate action and justice. Climate activism doesn't do it for you. It didn't for the principal, since after all, Greta is Time Magazine's Person of the Year, his words. How about some CRT, which is definitely not in our schools? Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Boy. Essential Guide to the Truths Americans Need to Know to Address Systemic Racism. One Person, No Vote. Author follows the astonishing story of government-dictated racial discrimination unfolding before our very eyes. Genesis Begins Again. I don't know if I've read a middle grade book that has made me so aware of the internalized racism the Black community deals with. Maybe climate change and CRT aren't your issue. How about gender theory and sexual orientation? Introducing George, a 4th grader who knows she's a girl despite appearances, begins to tell her secret. A book on a transgender's journey. 6th grade, guys. A few notes on other items within this exact same class. Each student was required to watch, then read Greta Thunberg's climate change speech at the Climate Summit. They were then required to use facts within the speech to justify Greta's points. A project glorifying climate change. The kids during instruction time are forced to watch CNN 10, usually a pack time item, and a totally separate discussion of why our kids are forced to watch CNN regularly. And yes, parents, your kids are forced to watch CNN regularly. Number 3, the kids were made to watch a video where a man was describing what actual racism is, how parents are using children as scapegoats to avoid conversations about racism, how to have uncomfortable conversations about racism with your child, and the 3 levels of racism. A, racists that say the N-word. B, racists like Derek Chauvin. C, involuntary racists that say, like saying you have black friends, or I'm not racist to anyone. I tried to contact the teacher and voice my concerns, to which they told me in no uncertain terms to get bent. So I had no choice but to talk with the principal, who also in no uncertain terms told me to get bent. As you can tell, this isn't education, it's activism, full stop. This type of stuff has consequences. Another one of my children was called a racist in their 3rd grade class by 2 young boys for having the audacity of doing the classroom job assigned by her teacher. Don't worry though, the teacher took a classroom poll on whether my child was actually a racist or not. Yes, this actually happened. So I'm here pleading with the board and deputy superintendent to look into this and do the right thing. The easiest of easiest compromises to which originally I was told to buzz off by 2 people who are supposed to care about parents' concerns. Last tidbit,
Thank
any
you.
guesses
Your
what the
time
college
is up.
degree is for the 6th grade English teacher? Political science. That's his major.
Next up, Christopher Brooks.
Good evening, everyone. I'm glad Ms. Lange is on the phone. I hope she hears this. I'm going to do a dramatic reading of an injunction issued by the Eastern Court of Missouri earlier today, related to Brooks versus FHSD. Plaintiffs claim that defendants engaged in viewpoint discrimination by using policies 1455 and 1471 last November to selectively censor disfavored views while letting plaintiffs' favored opponents speak freely. The Supreme Court has emphasized that once the state opens a limited public forum, it must respect the lawful boundaries it has set and may not discriminate against speech on the basis of viewpoint. The unique scrutiny defendants, you guys, imposed on plaintiffs provides evidence of defendants' discriminatory motive. Citing district policies 1455 and 1471, defendants banned plaintiffs from saying during patron comments the name of the organization, Francis Health Families, or from referring to its website, francishealthfamilies.org. On one occasion, defendants cut the microphone of one of the plaintiffs after he referred to the Francis Health Families website as a resource. Defendants have allowed other individuals to refer to other organizations with views supporting the board or its favored positions, or opposing Francis Health Families, and defendants have allowed other individuals to engage in political campaigning last month during patron comments without interruption. During the patron comment portion of the meeting last month, the board permitted several speakers to urge those listening to vote for certain candidates and to against candidates associated with Francis Health Families, thinly veiling the candidates to which the speakers referred. The speakers overtly implored the audience to vote for their favorite candidates, a direct affront to the board's no political campaigning policy, yet the board allowed the speakers to proceed. Further, the tone of the board's after-the-fact email to those speakers stands in contrast to the emails sent to the plaintiffs. I won't read it, you know what was in it. Okay. The court finds that the language defendants used to address plaintiffs compared to the apologetic language they used to emails to individuals who campaigned provides further evidence of viewpoint discrimination. It is always in the public interest to protect constitutional rights. Indeed, public discourse on the propriety of government action lies at the heart of the First Amendment, and the public has an interest in robust discourse on public education. Conclusion. The court finds that plaintiffs have demonstrated they have a fair chance of prevailing on the merits of their claim. They will suffer irreparable injury absent a preliminary injunction, and the balance of harms favors an injunction, and the protecting constitutional rights serves the public interest. Accordingly, the court grants plaintiffs' motion for preliminary injunction. The court enjoins, that's forbids, defendants, their officers, agents, servants, employees, and all persons in active concert or participation with them who received notice of this injunction right now from enforcing Francis House School District Policies 1455 and 1471 to prohibit plaintiffs' reference to the Francis House families or the Francis House families website while addressing the school board during patron comment period at school board meetings. This injunction takes effect immediately. Told you so.
Next up, Julie McDonald.
Good evening. I want to welcome Adam and Randy as they move into their terms as board members. Francis House residents and the staff that work with their children look forward to collaborations that will benefit all members of our community in a positive way. Across the nation, teacher burnout is high because morale is low. Colleagues I have taught with for decades are walking away from the profession because the stressors are too high. Their lights that were once so bright with talent and enthusiasm have been dimmed because the challenges are too high. I ask the board, chief admins, and superintendent to listen to the concerns being voiced by staff and take steps to steer the ship in a better direction in the 22-23 school year. Nevertheless, we continue to reflect on positives in the midst of the most challenging phase of education we've endured. To me and many others, a positive is community members who champion equity and a curriculum that is rich with factual accounts of American history as it pertains to all ethnicities. I am thankful for literature that shines light on varying perspectives and pushes us to grow and learn as unique human beings. When I look at this FHSD strategic plan, it says we should equip students with necessary life skills, including collaboration, communication, critical thinking, creativity, citizenship, and character. When I read the mission statement posted in this room, I reflect on what being a critical thinker means to me, both as a human and a reading teacher in the district. Critical thinking is not possible if certain views, experiences, and censorship are censored. Book censorship is not the way to achieve critical thinking. When we consider student ethnicity in Francis Howe, we have students that are Black, Hispanic, Asian, multiracial, Native American, Hawaiian, or Pacific Islander. These students account for 21.4% of our total student body. Their histories, truths, and perspectives can and should be taught. Doing so paves the way for genuine critical thinking. I'm thankful for Francis House community members that courageously share stories of their transgender children. I hear them say how staff members in buildings positively support them and intervene as need be when difficult situations arise. This is progress. This is an example of learning from the perspectives of others. Being open and honest about our true self is a necessary step towards ending prejudice. And when our children tell us about their authentic self, we must not only accept that as truth, but learn from their truth. When we look at the high suicide rates of LGBTQIA youth, we know their lives literally depend on the tolerance of others. Thank you.
Next up, Grayson Josts.
Good evening, I am Grayson Justice. I am an alumni of Francis House Central class of 2013. I want to welcome to our new board members to our school district, but remember this, even though you are against what works good for the students, but we will listen and we will watch what you do. But on the forum, you said that my question about voting for no on anti-LGBTQ law and policy is a state issue, not a school issue. Well, it is. It does affect every LGBTQ student, teacher, parent, staff, everyone. And Mr. Cook, you said you didn't know what the Don't Say Gay bill means. Well, let me give you what it means. Teachers can't talk about sexual orientation and gender identity to students from K to third graders in Florida. In Idaho, it's worse. It's the same as the Florida bill, but for 4th and 5th, 6th graders. But not just gender and sex, it's about also race. I hope you talk with your fellow board members about any issues that the board may introduce instead of only yourself and the people who vote for you. A few days later after the forum, I had someone or people posted me to move to the only gay neighborhood in St. Louis and pretty much in general just move away. So people like me, someone who is gay and non-binary, people like me who won't brainwash their children. Remember that. Thank you.
Next up, Ken Gontos.
Good evening. Tuesday's school board meeting began uplifting. It was pleasant, cordial, and even welcoming. Then we heard once again the false and untruthful narrative, quote, that some in this community do not want to teach Black history. Let me be clear. Continuing to make such statements is false, is dishonest, and it's wrong. The fact is that most people in this community made it clear election day that they do not want this specific so-called Black history curriculum taught. The reasons have remained constant. This curriculum was designed under the guidance and the self-proclamation expert of the race-critical theorist LaGarrett King. The curriculum is wrought in ideology and doctrine of CRT. On October 7th this year, a comprehensive 17-page letter was sent to every member of this school board, as well as to the superintendent, providing extensive detail and justification of how and why this curriculum is filled with critical race theory ideology and doctrine. It was written, by the way, after an appeal was made publicly on a local radio station by the administration to provide such specifics and details. To date, there has not been a single response, not one from any of you. If this board and administration continues to believe that, quote, we do not teach critical race theory, then a defense of your position is required and a response to that 17-page justification letter is warranted. If indeed diversity, equity, inclusion is a hallmark of this school board and administration, then include the 1776 perspective of the Black history along with what we have now. Let's show the community that we can work together forward. Thank you.
Next up, Jamie Martin.
Good evening. My name is Jamie Martin. I have 4 kids in the district, 2 in middle school, 1 in high school, and 1 who will be coming into kindergarten soon. I want to welcome our new school board members, Mr. Cook and Mr. Bertrand. I respect the voices of our community, but I didn't vote for you. In fact, about 44% of your community voters didn't vote for you. So I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic that you will remember that you represent people that may not have chosen you particularly to sit in the seats you sit in. And I'm optimistic that you'll remember that not only do you represent people, adults who didn't vote for you, that you also represent students, right, who come to a public school. Public school is important, right? It's our access and our tool to improve democracy, not improve, but to continue with the experiment of democracy. And it's our job to educate every student. You represent students who might be waiting for new facilities, who deserve facilities equal to that of the other facilities in the district, no matter where they live. You represent students like Ms. Bowens that you met earlier, who may have other abilities or be disabled. And you do, in fact, represent students who are of different races and who may have different sexual identities or gender identities than you identify with. Because you may not share their identities, you're going to have to work hard to listen. You're going to have to listen carefully to what their realities and what their struggles look like. And you're going to have to put yourself in their position to remember that they're here for a free public education and that they have a right to learn safely and equitably alongside their peers. And as you listen, I hope that you'll see all children as assets. I hope that you won't look at some students as deficits, as coming to us with deficits, but that you'll see each child, the promise, the potential of each child, no matter what they look like and no matter how they identify. Thank you.
Up next, Chris Hyman. All right, we'll skip past her. Rachel Brandel.
Hello, my name is Rachel, and I am a librarian. I'm also a member of the Intellectual Freedom Committee of the Missouri Library Association. And the chair of the Intellectual Freedom Committee, Joe, is also here with me today. When librarians get their master's degree in library science, we learn about a librarian called Ranganathan. Ranganathan created what is now known as the 5 laws of library science. 2 of these laws are what I would like to talk about tonight. The second law, every reader their book, and the third law, every book its reader. As a reader, my book is Roald Dahl's Matilda. I saw myself in a little girl who felt lost in her life, but at home in books. My peers made fun of me because I liked to read, and when I felt sad and lonely, Matilda was there to show me I wasn't alone. Matilda showed me that my love of reading made me special and gave me courage to stand up for what I believe in, just like I am today. In Matilda, Principal Trunchbull, the antagonist, spins a little girl by her pigtails until she flies into the bushes. This violent act by itself seems like something you wouldn't want your children reading. But without that scene, the reader wouldn't understand how terrifying the principal was and how powerful it is when Matilda stands up to her. If Matilda had been removed, I would not have felt seen. I would not have felt special, and I would not realize that, like Matilda, I could stand up for what is right against those bigger and more powerful than myself. To every reader, their book, and to every book, their reader, means that you will not see yourself in every character. You will not see your experience in every story, but someone else will. So it is our obligation as librarians, readers, and citizens to give access and diversity of our collection to our readers. Please don't judge an entire book's worth by one scene. Please let your students find their stories. And please, we would love, as the Intellectual Freedom Committee, to talk with you about ways we have teaching and other opportunities that we would love to share with you and talk with you. Thank you.
Up next, Marie Ashinger.
I'm honored tonight to talk to you about 3,386 of our students. Dyslexia affects 20% of our students in the general population. That's 1 out of every 5 people, a huge and staggering number. Dyslexia encompasses 80 to 90% of all learning disabilities. Most have an average to above average IQ. They can be great communicators, more creative, and see things as an overall picture. Dyslexia is a weakness within the phonological part of the brain, creating problems encoding and decoding words, putting sounds of words together and pulling them apart. A lot of dyslexics can read with difficulty, and they can slide under the radar, struggling until learning becomes almost impossible. No 2 dyslexics are the same, and there is a continuum of severity, but all struggle. When people without dyslexia read, 3 areas in the brain light up on the MRI. With dyslexics, only 1 area lights up. After children are taught by structured literacy, all 3 areas will light up again. 1/3 of dyslexics will become entrepreneurs, 1/3 will go to jail, and 1/3 in the middle. Reading is empowering. Hundreds of studies have shown that not being able to read proficiently, including being a dyslexic, increases the likelihood to be addicted to drugs, going to jail, homelessness, and committing suicide. Talk about mental health issues. We can help protect our children by properly teaching them to read in a different way. In 2018, the government did just this after realizing that 50% of prisoners were dyslexic. The U.S. passed a law requiring all prisoners to be screened for dyslexia and receive structured literacy. Early identification and intervention with evidence-based, explicit reading curriculum is critical to the success of these individuals. Some of these successes make up the 1/3 of dyslexics, which are entrepreneurs. Dyslexics are 400 times more likely to become millionaires than the average person. 60% of millionaires are dyslexic. Remember, only 20% of the nation's population are dyslexic. Some of these are Charles Schwab, Steve Jobs, Walt Disney, Richard Branson, Ted Turner, Steven Spielberg, and the list goes on and on. Dyslexics struggle daily to read and are prone to mental health issues if not given proper support. With literacy support, our students can live incredible lives. I personally know that Francis Howell.
Up next, Megan Payne. Megan Payne. All right, moving on to Sam Young.
I'm here to address your proposed statement on Senate Bill 649. I just going to say I don't think the bill should be voting on this statement tonight. In the past, you've been accused of not doing your due diligence and not getting feedback from the community. And you just continue with this vote tonight. I think you're just continuing those same characteristics. You only brought this up on Tuesday. It wasn't ready as a statement for the community to read until very recently. Barely had time for the community to really comment on it. You're supposed to represent the community, not just your personal experience or your thoughts. So you need to provide time for the community to provide feedback. And so I think you should delay this to provide that time. It also, you're entering into partisan politics. You guys are a nonpartisan board. So I think it's something you need to enter into cautiously, not rush into something that you thought about Tuesday night, and then when you vote on it Thursday. It just seems a little rush. Also, in your statement, you make the claim that it's revenue neutral, which I'm no expert on this bill. I barely looked at it. I did try to look for support for your statement. I just had a little bit of time before this meeting. I couldn't find it. I'm interested in that, very interested in that. Certainly would be a big part of whether I would support my representative on that bill. I'd like for you guys to provide support for that if you're going to put it in your statement and vote for it. I think it's the least you should do for showing due diligence. So I'd ask to the board that you guys table the statement tonight, or maybe do something like a first reading, so people know what you guys are concerned about. Definitely affects our school district, so I think it's appropriate for you guys to make a statement if you feel you need to. So I'm just looking for you to make one of those choices tonight. I ask that you not vote on it tonight. Thank you.
Comments from FEGA?
Good evening, Board of Education, Executive Cabinet, patrons, and parents. I want to thank all of the candidates for running. It is not easy to put yourself out there and take the ridicule that unfortunately comes with the territory. With that being said, anyway, so many relationships were built and a lot was learned through this. Congratulations to Adam and to Randy. You are our new Board of Education members, and we look forward to building a relationship with both of you. One thing we know for sure is that all of us want what's best for students. Make sure our students have what they need to learn, and make sure our staff has what they need to teach. Just a little side note, National Teacher Day is coming up on May 3rd. And if you can reach out to a teacher and give them some positive accolades, that would be great. We are struggling. Everyone is. So reaching out to a teacher, to a paraprofessional, to an administrator, and just letting them know they're doing a great job would be much appreciated. And again, welcome and thank you.
Good evening, Board, Cabinet, Administration, and community members. My name is Amy West, and I'm the President of FISPA. We would like to thank Mike Kane and Michelle Walker for their years of service to FHSD serving on the school board, and we wish them both the best. We also welcome Adam Bertrand and Randy Cook Jr. to the board. FISPA appreciates the time and effort from administration during negotiations so far, as well as the observation from board member Mr. Lynn. We hope we reach a tentative agreement soon. Thank you.
Now on to the MSBA report.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the Missouri School Boards Association's board report for the month of April. We thank you for the opportunity to share some news and information during a few minutes of your board meeting. We begin with a look at the issue of teacher recruitment and retention in Missouri. As we have reported previously, school boards and administrators throughout the state continue to grapple with a teacher shortage that has reached a crisis level in our state. Too few young people are entering the teaching profession, and too many teachers are leaving the profession early in their careers. The State Board of Education has formed a blue ribbon commission to address the problem, including the issue of teacher salaries in Missouri. The 17-member commission includes 5 business leaders. Commissioner of Education Margie Van Dieven says that's by design.
We know that we need to raise teacher salaries. We know that we need to work on some of the conditions, and we've put to keep teachers' retention efforts, to keep them in our schools, and we've been outlining those. But we really need the business community to be the ones who are carrying that charge, or it looks self-serving. If we go over and say we need a teacher increase, it looks like we're trying to self-serve. This is an economic issue for this entire state. And if our business leaders can find and help find a dedicated funding source, we need their assistance in doing so.
Van Dieven made her remarks during MSBA's recent legislative forum in Jefferson City. The goal of the commission is to develop a set of recommendations and clear action steps that address teacher recruitment and retention solutions. The MSBA Legislative Forum held last month included presentations on several legislative issues now before the Missouri General Assembly as it heads for its May adjournment. The event also included a student showcase at the Capitol where students from school districts throughout the state were on hand to discuss and demonstrate innovative programs in their districts. Governor Parson was among those who visited with the students. MSBA Executive Director Melissa Randall told school board members and administrators who visited the Capitol it's critical to tell the accurate story about the public schools of Missouri.
We've heard it said over and over and over again today that
that is our primary responsibility right now, is to get our story told and to drown out the inaccurate information that's out there. Not let it divide us. This is a time we have to be united and we have to be laser focused on our children. They need us more now than ever as they recover from the experiences they've had these past 2 years too. And our teachers, we know they're hurting as well. Laser focused on supporting great teachers in every classroom for every child.
Besides attending the student showcase, school board members and administrators had the opportunity to visit with their legislators at the Capitol during the legislative forum. If you were elected to your school board for the first time this month, welcome to school board service. Missouri law requires all school board members to receive 18.5 hours of training within their first 12 months of service. MSBA's CBM Essential Board Member Training fulfills this requirement and provides the foundation for becoming an effective school board member. The training is free for all new board members. Check the MSBA website for a schedule of the training opportunities along with registration information. Make your plans now to attend MSBA's Igniting Great Ideas Summit June 11th and 12th in St. Charles. It's a great opportunity to participate in valuable leadership sessions and to connect with your colleagues from school districts throughout the state. Also, be sure your board is represented at the June Delegate Assembly to be held in conjunction with the Great Ideas Summit. Delegates will be electing state officers for the coming year at that meeting. The nominating committee is proposing a slate of officers for consideration, including the offices of President-elect and Vice President. That's it for this month's edition of the MSBA Board Report. Thanks for allowing us to have some time at your board meeting, and so long from Columbia.
Next, we have a Prop S update from Jeremy Bettler.
Good evening, board. Start with 801. So Prop S updates for Project 801. So framing is complete on the second and third floor. We have some pictures to show you here in a second. Just a reminder, the second floor is where Union High School will be relocated to. So that is priority one right now at 801. We're starting the drywall on that floor. We have some pictures of that. We passed all of our framing inspections. We passed all of our MEFP inspections and wall roughs, which is exciting. Plumbing rough ends are just completing on the first floor. There's not a tremendous amount of work on the first floor. There's a couple of walls to build, some of the stuff for the finance department, but the majority of our work is on the second floor. Still anticipate completion for the summer of 22, and moving Union in there for the start of school in the fall of 22. Here's some videos you can see. Over on the left, you see drywall going up in some of the Union classrooms. We are adding some restrooms on the second floor for the Union kids, just because there's so many kids that will be occupying that. We're reusing what restrooms were there, but we're also adding one more set. That's what you see in the middle photo, some of the blocking and toilets that are going in here. And then on the right, you see that is actually the third floor framing. Third floor framing is nearing completion. Once we're kind of moving from the second floor to the third floor to the first floor. That kind of makes sense. That's kind of the way we're building the project. So kind of in a list of priorities. So things are moving right along. I know Mr. Klein's been working on the moving company and some of the FF&E stuff. So nothing but good news right now at 801. So Francis Howell North, obviously the major project. Structural steel continues on the classroom addition. We do have some pictures of that tonight along with the drone video. So it's actually starting to take shape, come out of the ground. You can actually see some of it when you actually drive by the school now, which is exciting. We continue to work at concrete on the main levels. We're probably about 50 to 60% done with concrete slabs. So we're moving right along. And then the plumbing and electrical, which we talk about every month, I feel like, but very boring stuff. All the underground work, it is almost completed. So we've been working on that for about 7 months now. It's just getting ready to finish. Also, the masons have arrived on site. So this is a large masonry project. We will have somewhere between 30 to 50 masons on site for almost 2 years. So They have started. They are building some of the firewalls. We'll look at some of that video here in a second. And then the footings and foundations are also nearing completion. So this is a picture that they take daily. There's better photos coming up, but the existing school's kind of sitting where Jane is. As we look kind of up, you can see some of the steel being constructed here. These are actually the gymnasium slabs that have been poured now. The new stadium will sit right in this area here. And then this is the classroom addition. So baseball fields are up here in this corner. So here we can see the steel being erected. Like I said, one of the things the board might know is we've talked a lot about steel primer. And how that's just something that's been done in the industry forever. And with kind of the cost of construction now, it's something that we removed. You'll notice that we are still priming the exterior steel. So all the columns and beams on the exterior are still being primed. That's what we wanted to do. But you'll notice as you see video now, you'll start to see the copper colored steel in the middle. So we've talked a lot about steel primer in our meetings. I know a lot of times it doesn't make sense. You actually can start seeing this as we take pictures of stuff we're doing. Here's some of the slabs being poured for the new gymnasium. This is actually the practice gym slab right here. Tractors working. Here's where you see masonry walls being built. So this is actually the gymnasium here. This is a large firewall that's being built. We're looking south, kind of from Henderson. These are large walls. These will be building all over the site. These are braced. They were finishing the wall up this day, but all these are braced so they don't look they're going to topple in the winds we're going to get over the weekend. Here is a drone video. I'll talk as we show it. Go ahead, play, Jane. Existing high schools over here. Here we have the depression for the fields. Here we can just see how much steel has actually been set. And you'll notice now all this steel is a copper color where we're not priming it, but substantial amount of iron has been erected on the site. They will build this, then they will go this way, then they will go this way. So this is the U we talk about. This is the first part of the project, and then they'll continue going this direction with the classrooms. If you're familiar with Francis Howell High School, it has a very similar U shape as well to it at the lower area. So again, gyms, main academic area. Okay, now we're looking to the south in the opposite direction. We try to take this shot every month just to give the board an idea of kind of the same perspective. Here we see the steel going up again, all the decking on site getting ready to be shaken out. Slabs are poured, slabs are poured. These slabs are not poured. You see the foundations are done. They've been rocked. The concrete is not in yet. We're working on these. Over here as well. And then up on the far right, you're going to see the actual auditorium. You kind of see the back of the seating of the auditorium taking place. This little thing's kind of cool. That's actually like the AV hub, I believe. This is the storm shelter right here. That storm shelter has been built out of solid concrete. And it is starting to arrive on the first week of May, so that'll be an exciting time. Some of the trusses for that storm shelter are about 85 foot long, one piece. They have to get all those down the highway and onto our site and make the turns. We had a pre-construction meeting with them last week. They think they can do that. They have a staging yard ready to go, but that is a big building to build, so it'll be exciting to see that go up and actually be erected on site. So exciting times. Here we have the allowances. Now we're going to move into the financial aspect of things. We do have some stuff to talk about tonight. Escalation allowances, which is $1.1 million. GMP allowance is $1.1 million. These are still at zero, meaning none of this money has been spent to date. We are reviewing this. I would anticipate at the next board meeting we will have some actual amounts being allocated to these numbers. So just to remind the board what an allowance is, it's an amount included within the contract. So if we're under that allowance amount, the district gets that money back. If we go over that allowance amount, the district pays for that. But we do anticipate both of these numbers to end up being below the allowance we have allocated. So we'll be, we're finalizing some of these items and we'll have more information at the next board meeting. Talk a little bit about cost savings. So VE has been a main topic of discussion over the past 3 or 4 months. I can tell you that the VE process has been very lengthy. There's been hundreds of hours put in. We have our architect here tonight with us, but between the architect and the contractor, SM Wilson, John Klein, and myself, it's just hour after hour of going through the drawings, trying to find out are there things that we can do better, are there things we can do that can save money, and then the most important process is, will those changes have an impact on kids? So we've tried really hard to find items that we can do better, cheaper, that don't have a ton of impacts on kids. So steel primer is a great example of something like that. So we're going to talk a little bit about tonight of the fruits of that process, and then I'm going to use a couple examples, and then I'd be happy to ask any questions the board has. We had a target VE of 6.4 million. I'm going to use big numbers here, so just bear with me. But 6.4 million. And what that means is we knew within Wilson's GMP we had 6.4 million we had to get in VE. We had to go find $6.4 million within the GMP. So that was our targeted amount. I'm happy to announce as of today we're at about 6.9 million. So we've exceeded that target amount. As of right now, we're to the positive of over $500,000, meaning that amount falls to the bottom line of the school district. So it's not 6.9 million, it's $500,000, but it still steps in the right direction. And I would tell the board that the VE process never stops. So we continue to find new ways, new things to do as we buy out more of the jobs. So anything we can do to try to be cost effective, we're going to continue to do that. But I hope this demonstrates that we are working at it, we are finding those savings, and we are moving in the right direction. There are still some allowances left within the VE, so we don't have everything nailed down yet. That'll be an ongoing conversation, but those are very, very minor amounts. There's a little fluctuation that we can still see, but so the 6.93 might become 6.92 or something like that. But for the most part, these numbers are solid and ready to be presented and put into a contract with SM Wilson. So I think that's good news. We also talk about the 1.1 million of allowances that remain unused, so about 2.2 million of allowances. They are finalizing their estimating on some of those drawings, so we'll have some meetings, some information next month for the board, but like I said, I anticipate there being some money to the good on those two amounts as well. So, good to do a couple examples of VE. You know, I get asked a lot of times, you know, give me an example of what you're doing to save money. You know, there is a list of VE items that is hundreds of items long. And that list has notes in it of every engineer we talk to, every architect we've had a conversation with. That's all within the, I believe those are posted as part of the meeting minutes that you can look at for the Prop S meeting. But I'm just going to highlight 3 items here that kind of hopefully gives the board some understanding of the kind of stuff we're looking for. So one of the things we did is we changed aluminum feeders within the electric rooms to 200 amps or higher. So this is an example of where copper costs are just out of control. So after we bid this job, we went back and talked to our electricians and said, what can you find? They were able to find some aluminum feeder, some areas where aluminum feeders could be used instead of copper, and we could save money. Now, no one would have anticipated that copper costs were going to rise in the way they did when we bid the project, but this is an area where this will save $276,000. So it's a huge amount of money. The electrical engineers were part of this conversation. They signed off on this. It meets the code. Everything's good. But it's another example of something that doesn't affect kids, that saves us money. So that's the kind of stuff we're targeting. Cabinetry. We saved over $250,000 of cabinetry just looking at the cabinet systems we were using. Different kinds of oak we were going to actually use in the cabinets, different kinds of mechanisms we were going to use to hang the cabinets. The teachers have the exact same amount of cabinet space. We're just using different systems, and we're saving $250,000. Doesn't affect kids. Easy money, right? And then lastly, the site work. The site work was a massive undertaking. Wade, who's back here with Homer, he's spent his whole life on this, I bet he feels like by now, but we were able to lower some of the grades on the site, thereby lessening how much dirt had to be imported. It also reduced some of our site lighting, we got rid of some of our concrete, and then we were just able to look at things like what was our curb construction. So rather than use vertical or curb gutter combos, we're going to use some vertical curves, vice versa. Went from a vertical curb to a curb gutter. But all that stuff you can see is almost $1.4 million of the savings. So just things that we did within, you would never notice this stuff if you walked outside if we built it both ways. So, you know, and a lot of these, I will say that, you know, the one thing we don't talk about is the subcontractors. So we weren't able to get into a lot of these numbers until we had bids in and were able to talk to subcontractors and say, what do you see? What do you think makes more sense? what do you think we can do better? And those conversations have really led to a lot of these opportunities. So, I hope this is a quick 30,000 view for the board of what the work we've been doing. Like I said, there are hundreds of these items. I'm happy to talk about any of them that the board would like to in the future, but hopefully this gives you kind of a general feel of what we've been doing, what we've been working on, and where we are financially. So that is all I have. I will take any questions or if Kevin has anything to add.
Kevin, you have anything to add?
I just reiterate a point that Jeremy made, and that is that our partnership with Wilson really has brought a lot of value to this project because they took a look at the site design and said, we think we can make some relatively minor modifications. If you, the architect, will take a look at shifting the location of the football field just slightly, we can reduce the amount of dirt that we have to bring onto the project, and you can see the resulting savings that come from doing that. So I just appreciate the partnership between Honer and SM Wilson and Atlas and the district to take a look at those opportunities to reduce our overall costs and still provide a high value product that will serve our community for many, many years.
Okay. I just wanted to say I was at the last facilities meeting and you weren't there. And I asked John to send me the file for the value engineering stuff. So I'm really just going to make a request to have somebody, John or whoever, send it to the rest of the board because it's really crazy to see some of the stuff and the savings from going from, replacing sod to seed and straw and stuff like that. So all the different work going into it with all the side notes and everything. It's just a good file, I think, that everybody could just thumb through whenever they have a chance to see.
Yeah, we're happy to share that because it really does show how much work went into it. And I would say on that list too, on the right side, that is where all the notes exist for every conversation. So we don't just make changes to electric feeders without multiple conversations with the engineers. And all those are on the right side listed as I discussed with the engineer, this is what he said, we went back and forth. So it's not just about the prices, it's also about the documentation and the backup of the decisions that we made and why we made them. So we'd be happy to share that.
And that was part of my thing. I was like, well, who gets to make these decisions? I think, you sit around saying, let's go from oak to pine, but you can clearly see it.
Correct.
Engineers, architects.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
It's also my understanding that some of those meetings have been pretty lengthy, and
they have been.
While the school district has actually been shut down, you guys were meeting.
Correct. Yeah, that's right.
I just have a quick question about just public entities building and trying to construct in this environment right now. Do you have any anecdotal or any other outside stories that you can possibly share?
I do. There's everyone's facing challenges. I don't know if you saw the current one is on the front page of the paper, I believe, this week. But the St. Louis Convention Center just was bid out. They're doing an expansion to bring more conventions into the area. $75 million project. Been drawn for years. They actually had a professional estimate done by a company out of Denver who just does construction estimating for $75 million. They had one bidder on the whole project, and the bids came in at about $130 million. So they actually have a second phase of $75 million, and they can't even find anyone to bid that project right now. So, we continue to see the trend, Doug, that people are having a hard time finding companies to bid work. And when they do find companies to bid work, those prices are sometimes 100%, 50 to 100% higher than even a professional estimator is doing on a national. And those estimates were done recently. They weren't done 5 years ago. Those estimates were done 3 months ago. So, between Orchard Farm, the convention center, we're seeing, unfortunately, the trend is not getting better. And I would tell the board that it's great that North has been bid out, but we have more work coming, and we are going to be in the middle of it again. So it is still not a buyer's market, is what I would say. Yeah, I hope that answers your question.
It does, thank you. Yeah.
I feel like since I'm in Mr. Haynes' seat, I should probably say something. But first of all, thank you for doing that. My question to you is, we've put a lot of effort into 801 and into the Francis Hall North. I know that there are other past projects that the facilities committee has been meeting on. In a future board meeting, I'm not saying next month or the month after, in a future board meeting, could you just bring the board an update of where we sit with those projects and what we're looking at and price? I know you'd mentioned that we're looking at this problem all the way down the road, but if we could kind of see where we're at with the other projects, I would really appreciate it.
We have some of that information, happy to share. Yes, no problem.
Thank you. Like I said, it doesn't have to be at the next board, just in the future, if you could, I think our public would like to see where we're also sitting with some of those projects.
What the plan is, right?
Okay, yeah, exactly. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Jeremy, I'd like to know about the timeline. Basically, materials we all read and we hear about things stuck on ships and they're not getting here and there's a shortage of.
Yeah.
How are we doing as far as getting materials for both 801 and Francis Hall North?
We have our challenges. I try to not get into the weeds with the board, but I will say that, we have tried to design around some of those challenges. I will pick on something, for example, we're having a hard time getting the doors for 801. When I say that, I don't mean we won't have the doors for the time for school to start, but we don't have the doors yet, and we should have had them by now. So just getting doors right now is very difficult because of the manufacturing problems that our country is facing. So we're going to get them in time. It's not the end of the world, so I don't want anyone to be alarmed, but we are facing those, and we're having to be creative about what we do. I will go back to North and say that had we not bought the steel when we bought it months ago, we would be waiting for 6 months before we would see steel. So, it is impacting us, and we're having to get very creative with what we do. But even in the future, the delays are getting worse, and the delays aren't getting worse because of there's still shipping issues, but demand is skyrocketing. It's great when the government is spending money and doing all these infrastructure bills. That's wonderful, but that just drives demand up, and more materials go there, and there's less materials for everyone to get. So we're still seeing our challenges, and I don't think that's going to change. So.
And Mr. Lane, I would just add, by way of example, last summer we struggled with supply issues relative to the security vestibules. We began the school year with some temporary structures at a couple of our buildings because the storefronts had not arrived yet. But we creatively found a solution. We kept school going. Everything happened. When the storefronts came in, they were installed over a weekend or in the evening. So I just want to, while we're facing challenges, please know the team is working very, very hard to work around those so that there won't be any disruption to the program. Just as we did with the security vestibules, making sure that school opened on time.
Yes.
Even with the temporary structure in place.
Yes. Yes. Thank you.
All right, so thanks for the information. I'm going to kind of second Janet's request of information. I know there's more conversations going on. I've read through the notes, and I'd really appreciate every meeting coming up line by line, kind of going through. So we have that information, so that we know, because we aren't all on those committees, on those design teams. I appreciate kind of the marketing side of it, of presenting stuff, but we need to make sure that we're aware so we can make decisions if we need to make decisions.
Sure.
One of the things in the notes was presenting standard industry items for cost savings. What non-standard industry items have you guys looked at?
Ask that question a different way. So
when I was reading through the notes for the design team, one of the things was talking about coming and presenting the board, and it said present the standard items for value engineering. So what non-standard things should people be aware of?
When you say non-standard, do you think that means items that maybe we didn't take?
I wasn't in the conversation, so I don't know.
Yeah, I may have to, I'll do my best to answer that, but I might have to go back and read that exact bullet point in the notes before I can answer that.
I know that's just interpretation for whoever wrote the bullet point.
Yeah, I mean, I think the challenge in, I'll say this, with the Prop S group, we go through line item by line item. And it takes sometimes 3 to 4 hours to get through it all. So I think one of the thoughts there is to try to give the board a feel for some of the stuff we're removing, but not take it line item by line item. So that's what I believe the standard versus non-standard was referring to. There were also items that were not taken. So, we had 150 items brought up, and like 110 of them were actually taken. Other ones were just hey, let's chop 20,000 square foot of the building off. Now that's not going to work. We're not going to do that. So I think that might have been, I'll have to review that exact language, unless Kevin or Nathan know.
Yeah, I think one other clarification, there's lots of things that were originally designed by industry standard. And we have found that through this process, some of those things we could look at differently. So I think that's probably what he's referring to.
Yeah, and that would make sense too. What that refers to is that, I'll pick on the steel primer. We've been doing things like in my industry in construction, steel primer since I've been doing this since the 90s. And now all of a sudden, because projects are so expensive, everyone's looking at that like, is this really necessary? So I think that might have been the standard construction thing.
Gotcha.
I will verify that though.
All right, I appreciate the kind of the insight on that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of community members, I think, in the construction industry, in the building trades. Can we extend that value engineering list and put it on the agenda for the board meeting so that everybody can see and access it? I think they'd appreciate the transparency of everything going on.
I'll speak to that a little bit too, and Kevin weigh in. It is a working document that a lot of brainstorming, a lot of conversation, and part of the conversation was, when is this ready for public consumption? And that's really what that was based on. I don't think we'll have any problem sharing a full document once it's ready for sharing. But we didn't want to mislead people with a partially brainstormed document out there and causing confusion.
I have lots of questions.
Okay.
Any details, updates? I saw there's conversation around the transportation facility.
Next board meeting.
Next board
That is
meeting.
the top priority for the next board meeting. We will be ready to go. We will be bringing something to the board to have them review and give us feedback on what the next steps they believe should be. Yes, sir.
And then going back to the value engineering list, is there items in there that were excluded from the project but that we're still going to have to reimburse or pay for in the future?
Items that were excluded from the project. So are we talking about soft costs? Is that what you think you're referring to? So Kevin wants to talk.
I'll handle that. The answer would be no. So what we've tried to do is to stick with the realizing the full concept, and not to harp on the same idea, but the idea of shelving. So we aren't removing shelving from the contract and saving money and then having to come back at some later date and build shelving. We're choosing a different material for the shelving, providing the same amount of shelving in the same spaces, but doing it for a less expensive cost.
Yes, that is correct.
We haven't removed anything in order to reduce the cost that will cause us to come back at some later date and say, oh, by the way, we need shelving in all the closets. We didn't put that in. No, we didn't do that.
Okay, so we didn't remove any FF&E, the pull out that we're going to come in back in again.
FF&E is separate. So FF&E always comes at the end of the project. So that's not part of the $165 million. So we haven't had any conversations about FF&E other than as it relates specifically to, maybe some conversations about equipment within chemistry labs where we might buy a movable fixture. But right now we're talking about construction and things that would be affixed to the building, FF&E, which is often considered to be portable or attached later. That conversation will come up.
Yeah, and I would say I would add on to that, say the FF&E scope has not changed based on the value engineering. That makes sense.
That makes sense.
Okay.
Finally, I saw on the notes for, I guess it was the design team, which I guess is different than facilities committee.
Yes.
Talk about the demographic survey prior to Henderson. Is there any talk, or should we be thinking about holding off on the renovations of Henderson and looking at other expansions until we get that survey done and completed, see if any of the elementary schools that were paused still need to be completed?
Mr. Bertrand, you made a perfect segue for me. So I wanted to, because the question came up twice tonight, I just wanted to provide some background for the board. So, it seems like forever, but really it was December when the final change order was approved to the contract, and then we embarked on a very aggressive program to do value engineering for Francis Howell North. And so our architects have been consumed in their work focusing on North and getting the drawings from 90 to 95% to 100%. We're now working on a conformed set of drawings, which will be the final set. And so I just want you to know that we haven't been ignoring the other projects that are part of Proposition S, but really all of the work has been focused on getting North, getting those drawings finally complete, and then getting 801 ready to go so we could move the students in. But we are having conversations about Henderson, and we are having conversations about the transportation facility. And we specifically asked the demographer who had suggested to us that a longer time framework would allow him to produce more accurate results after kids would be enrolled at the beginning of the school year. And we didn't feel that the additional time would yield significantly different results. And having that information earlier will help us better inform decisions about Henderson. So we encourage the demographer to get the work done hopefully by the end of this fiscal year, so that as we're having conversations now moving forward about what to do for Henderson or Fairmount or any of the other projects that have been listed, we can do so from an informed perspective as to what the demographic trends are telling us are going to happen in the district over the next 5 to 10 years, so that we aren't building excess capacity in the wrong area of the school district. So that's exactly why we haven't brought anything else forward to really begin to talk about Henderson. We need to have our work informed by what the demographer says is going to be happening with enrollment trends.
Which is also one of the challenges of showing that what Janet and you asked for. We'll do that, but it's impossible to put it. We're able to show what we think the projected costs of projects will be in the future based on today's dollars. But to put kind of a priority list together is almost impossible until we get some of the demographer information back. So when you get that, just be prepared for that. It'll just kind of show this is what it all is. I don't know how the ordering is going to work yet. So just kind of a heads up of what we'll probably have to show.
I appreciate that. Thanks, Mr. Supple. My last question was just on a comment that I saw about paying retainage early.
Yep.
Any commentary on that? Why that decision?
Well, it's not. Yeah, I'll start and Kevin can finish. It's paying retention early is not what we're doing. So we have different packages within the contract with SM Wilson. So package 1 is a grading package, just the JTL. We're actually going to close that package out completely, treat it like its own separate job. So they're 100% done with their work, or when they are, we will have the civil engineering firm come out along with the architecture and designers, do a complete punch list on that, do all the warranty information, punch it, complete the punch, and then release retention. So that is a good practice to use on a job of this size. So you can imagine if you're JTL holding $200,000 until 2025 would not sit well. So it's a good practice, but we will absolutely follow the letter of the law, making sure they are completely done before the retention is released. And we're only doing that for the packages, not for individual subcontractors. So the electrician can't say, I'm done, I want my money. It doesn't work that way. There's only package 1 was grading package, a steel package, and then there's a concrete and underground utility package. So good question.
Great.
Yep.
Can you talk a little bit about 801 corporate? So you mentioned the second floor is union, the third floor is the new central office, effectively.
Yeah.
What is the first floor going to be used for?
I'll speak to what I know on building, and then I'll let if someone else wants to go. So you are right. The third floor, basically administration. Let's say it like that. The first floor has some breakout conference rooms being built, and also a potential new board area. And then also there is some work being done for some of the administration people, which will actually be on the first floor. Mainly, I believe the finance and HR department, if I'm not mistaken.
Finance and HR and technology have their offices located on the first floor. Academic functions, District Learning Center and all of the academics are really centered on the third floor. We chose specifically to keep, for instance, HR, it makes the most sense to have them located on the first floor so that prospective candidates and so forth can interact with that department without having to cross paths with students going up and down the stairs or the elevator, et cetera. So HR is right near the main entrance, so those activities can take place in a way that makes the most sense for the type of business that they conduct. And then really the placement of finance and technology came as a result of the final decision about what space could be allocated and needed to be allocated for academics. And so there wasn't space on the third floor to accommodate those functions in that area, so they were located on the first floor.
My last question is about ADA compliance or ADA on playgrounds. We recently renovated several playgrounds at the elementary schools. Is there any, I've heard and read complaints of lack of ADA compliance. Is there any plans to do that? I know I've seen small projects we've done through the years, but is that something
I'll answer generally, and then I'll let John answer if I miss anything. We do, I mean, obviously as part of the any building package, we do a complete ADA review. Building new buildings, obviously there's very specific codes. We also then, on any project that we're doing new, sit down with the ADA people that work for Francis House directly and say, hey, what do we need to do just above and beyond even what's required by law, just to make sure, we're not only meeting ADA expectations, we're exceeding them, but not getting too crazy, because I hate to say it, but it can get crazy. That is what we do on every project. I don't know exactly, John, if I missed anything in the playgrounds, no, I think they're all ADA accessible. You went through the same process with those.
I think there's I want to make sure that there's, I've been privy to some of the conversations, so I want to make sure that we're clear. I think the term ADA is being used in a very, very broad sense, and some of the concerns that have been expressed have been about inclusive pieces of equipment that can be used by students with special, which is different than being ADA accessible. We do have, the new playgrounds do include pieces of equipment that are designed for students with, with special needs. So and they meet the standards of what we have for other playgrounds. I understand that there are parents who would love us to have every single piece of equipment on the playground be accessible for students with special needs, but it significantly drives up the cost. And so we had to balance that. We absolutely have accessible playgrounds, and we absolutely have playgrounds that provide opportunities for students with special needs to take advantage of the equipment, but we may not have satisfied every parent's desire for the amount of inclusive equipment included within the playground design. But we have documentation that our playgrounds meet all of the requirements for ADA and inclusive opportunities for kids.
Thank you.
Board, any other questions, comments?
Thank you.
Thanks, Sharon. All right, turn it over to Kevin for tax liability notice.
Thank you, Mr. Ziegermeyer. This is just really provided for informational purposes. The state law requires that school districts file with the county a projected tax liability notice indicating, based on the values that are provided to us in March by the assessor, what we think the tax rate would be for the coming year. We'll actually set the tax rate in September after the Board of Equalization hearings are completed and we get final assessed value numbers. So this is just an indicator of where we're headed. 2022-23 is a non-reassessment year, so there's almost no change in the tax rate because we don't really have much movement within our assessed value. So this information had to be filed with the county by April the 8th, so it wasn't completed in time for the March meeting, and this April meeting is taking place after we provided it. But this is it's only an informative piece anyway, because there is no, we're not bound to this tax rate. It will the tax rate calculation will actually be done in August and September once we have those after Board of Equalization numbers.
Any discussion or comments? Board? All right. All right, on to the consent agenda. Board, I'd like a motion to approve the consent agenda for April 21st, 2022 as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? And Jane, we had a first by Janet and then a second by Adam. Moving on to action items. Motion to approve the March 2022 monthly finance report as presented. First by Patrick Lang, second by Chad Lang. Any discussion, board? All right, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, board, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the purchases over $7,500 as presented.
So moved.
Second.
First by Chad Lang, second by Janet Stigledge. Any discussion, board? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Board, I'd like a motion to approve the purchasing of books for the grade 7 book club from Follett as presented.
So moved. Second.
First by Randy Cook, second by Janet Stigledge. Any discussion, board?
I would like to make a motion to table this until next meeting, just because I think we need more information on what books are currently available in the coursework. And I would like to wait for that. The purchase order is good until after next meeting, so there shouldn't be a problem with that. And I'd like to wait for that information so we can see what other books are available and make a balanced decision around what books we currently have versus adding new books to that course.
Do I have a second, board? Second. Discussion on tabling the motion?
Adam, I don't understand your motion, to be honest.
Yeah. So the motion is to take this off and pause it until next meeting, rediscuss. So we have coursework that's currently available. These are courses that are currently offered. We have books available for the coursework. So I would like to know what books are available currently and like have a list of them, how many we have. I'd like to make sure that we're using our funds appropriately and we aren't over purchasing on books and that we're having books that are underutilized.
Connie's not here. I was under the impression that these are books to replace books that we already have that have been damaged, to replace books and or to add to sets of books they already have. I think they already do an inventory.
I was told they didn't have time to provide an inventory.
That I don't know.
It was my understanding that these are in addition to existing books that are already offered at book club. So these would be supplemental to books that are already available was my understanding.
Dr. Brothers is shaking his head yes. For Mr. Rose.
And these are book club books. These are not added to just the typical curriculum books. So these, but they are additional books being recommended.
Any other discussion or insight?
David, are these books across the district for all 5 of our middle schools? Thank you.
Dr. Hogan or Dr. Rompus or anybody else that can speak to it, what's the normal process for selecting these books and why they're presented tonight?
Sure, I can speak to that. Board, some information was shared with you a few months back, specifically referring to the process for reviewing books. And so this is a little different than the question about comparing it to existing inventory and as far as whether these titles are, comparing to the existing inventory. But there's also a review process that looks at the books that are recommended, looks at the reviews, the summaries of those books, looks at the organizations that put those books together. And so these aren't just thrown on the list and sent in front of the board. These have all gone through that review process and met with approval. So it is possible other books were recommended that did not get through that process and come forward, but everything in front of you has been through that process. And I think it also is important to point out, just philosophically as a school district, continuing to increase the variety and amount of books for students is something that we find to be very important, especially when you start introducing choice for kids and more choice, more books, more opportunity to get kids reading, find books of interest is something we're going to continue to find very valuable. And so it's not to always say, do we have enough books for a kid to find to read, but continuing to expand those options for our kids is something we will continue to look to do.
Any other questions?
Sorry, could you explain for all of us who Follett is? I think I know.
I guess it depends how you need to explain it. I mean,
it's a resource that all school districts utilize to obtain books.
I mean, it's certainly a common place for schools to order their books. Absolutely.
Correct. Okay.
With respect to Follett, I understand that the benefit of ordering books bound by Follett is that they can be rebound and they're more resilient to student use. Can anyone speak to how often, say, a typical book needs to be rebound? I mean, is it common?
I cannot speak to how often, because I don't know that we engage in a lot of rebinding, but I will say what happens is we do buy a lot of replacement books because the ones that we have, sometimes for some of our literature classes at the high school level, they'll buy paperbacks, and those paperbacks might last 1 year, and then a number of them have to be replaced. So I don't know that we rebind the books. I think the idea here is that we avoid the fact of having to replace books that we've already purchased, the way that we do for some of our literature classes where we have books that are don't have the same quality binding, and so have to be actually replaced. But we rarely, repair the books.
One follow-up question. How normal or consistent has this process been year after year? This is a pretty routine.
As far as adding books?
Correct.
Absolutely. I would say what has been different, though, is in response to a lot of the questions and things that have come up, the review process is actually much more thorough than what had existed in the past. And so, but yes, the typical process every year of adding books for our schools is certainly something we've been doing.
All right, so any other discussion about tabling?
If I could say something. I think we need to make sure, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Supple, about implying table. If we put something on the table, means there's something more urgent that we need to take care of. So we might need to do just to postpone until the next meeting in this motion if we...
Is that how you want to amend your motion? Second on amending that? Okay. So the question at hand is postponing the decision to order these books until the next board meeting.
Mr. Ziegemeier, can I make one more comment?
Sure.
I do think anytime we talk about postponing, it also brings into the question of delivery time. And I can't claim that we're going to know exactly how that gets impacted, but I do think it's a piece to consider.
I would argue against delivery because we already have books for these coursework, and so we aren't up on a wall of having it delivered at a certain time.
Any other discussion? All right, so the question at hand is to postpone the purchase of the books.
Can we make that a little clearer? Postpone purchase of the books until next meeting in order to provide time for a list of books for the current course, so that we have that information.
Okay. The motion is to postpone the approve the purchase of books for grade 7 book club as presented till next board meeting.
Can I request that we do a roll call vote on this?
By roll call.
Mr. Cook.
Yeah.
Patrick Lane.
Nay.
Nay.
Mr. Ziegemeier.
Nay.
Aye.
Nay. Janet Slick, and then Mary Lane.
All right, so we have the main motion to approve the March 22nd. I'm sorry, let me get this back in order. Main motion to approve the purchasing of books for the grade 7 book club from Follett as presented. We have a first by Randy Cook and a second by Janet Stiglich. By roll call.
Patrick Lane.
Aye. Aye.
Mr. Zickemeyer.
Aye.
Ms. Lang. Adam Bertrand. Janet Stiglich.
Nay.
Apologize. Thank you, Mr. Cook.
All right, on to the next motion, or next item for action. Board, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the purchasing of books for English 2 book club from Follett as presented.
So moved. Second.
First by Chad Lang, second by Randy Cook. Board, any discussion?
I would again like to make a motion to postpone until next meeting for this item as well.
Is there a second to that?
In order to provide time to get appropriate information.
Second.
Just to make clear, so we have it on record, you want your motion to be motion to approve the purchasing of books for English 2 book club from Follett as presented, move to next meeting.
To next meeting in order to provide information on current books available.
We have a first with Adam Bertrand for that and a second with Randy Cook. Board, any discussion? No discussion? By roll call. The motion.
Chad Lang.
Just clarify it here. It's a little confusing.
Yeah, so do you want to read back the motion that we're voting on?
Motion to postpone purchasing of books for English 2 book clubs from Follett as presented until next meeting in order to provide additional details.
Nay.
Ms. Lang. Nay. Mr. Zickemeyer.
Nay.
Adam Bertrand.
Aye.
Janet Stiglich.
Nay.
Randy Cook.
Yay.
And Patrick Lane.
Nay.
All right, back to the question at hand for the motion that was approved by Chad Lang and seconded by Randy Cook. Motion to approve the purchasing for books for English 2 book clubs from Follett as presented. By roll call.
Ms. Lang. Aye. Mr. Zickemeyer.
Aye.
Mr. Bertrand.
Nay.
Ms. Stiglich.
Aye.
Mr. Cook.
Nay.
Mr. Lane.
Aye.
Mr. Lang.
Aye.
All right, next action item, motion. Board, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve a 1-year renewal for the Education Plus membership as presented.
So moved.
First by Janet Stiglich, second by Chad Lang. Board, any discussion?
I would like the motion that we postpone this till next meeting in order to have a detailed cost benefit analysis on what we are gaining from the membership, so that we can determine if it's appropriate and should be spent. I am concerned that, it's like $100,000, that's a lot of teachers or paras or raises that could be paid for with that money.
Board, is there a second on that?
Second.
Any discussion, board?
Yeah, I would like to put my 2 cents worth in here. As a former member of Francis Howell and also presenting at Education Plus, while I understand Mr. Bertrand's concerns about the amount of money spent, I think that the professional development that this company, this program provides to all our teachers and all our administrators and all our nurses and all our custodians is definitely worth the $100,000. And I don't know how you can put a cost analysis on what our teachers and what our people are getting from it. I was part of this. I presented at Education Plus on several occasions for nurses across the district, and it was definitely beneficial. So, while I understand it is a lot of money, I really think that the benefits outweigh the amount spent.
So I'll respond just for
Adam, Bertrand.
So I'll respond. I mean, nothing against the program per se itself. It's just it appears that, I mean, we still have to pay for the workshops. We get a discount for it. We can still pay for it afterwards. But we may not be getting that benefit, that discount, and the other perks that we get from membership may not be paying for the membership itself. And if not, then we should be looking at whether we should have that membership. We can still send you to their training.
Chad?
I just want to see, I think this came up years ago to question this, so I'd just like to ask administration to maybe highlight some things and benefits of being a member of Ed Plus.
I think we could probably add a couple of different things, but one thing that has been very noticeable is when the pandemic hit, Ed Plus has consistently had regional superintendent meetings where they used to be a little less often, but they would say be monthly, that all of the regional superintendents get together and problem solve and look at best practices, things like that. Well, once the pandemic hit, those have become weekly meetings. And so Ed Plus has coordinated and brought together for 2 years now weekly meetings of all the superintendents across the region. They also have the resources to bring in outside resources. Say the commissioner, the state commissioner comes and meets with that group, where as an individual district you're not going to necessarily get that kind of access. But that's just one example of the kinds of things that we now have access to on a weekly basis, and that's no extra charge. That is something that is included in that membership.
Is it also part of a co-op as well for purchasing, I want to say like toilet paper, reams of paper and all kinds of stuff, like tens and tens of thousands of dollars?
Yes, Mr. Lang, that's correct. And just one example I'll give you is that the custodial supplies that we purchase are through a co-op arrangement with Education Plus. And there's hundreds of thousands of dollars in those. And so it's difficult to, we'd almost have to go out and bid those products by ourselves to find out what the difference would be. But there are other commodities that are available to us through Education Plus. The other good thing is that there are a number of single-use type items. What I mean is things that we wouldn't bid frequently, like copy paper. It would be something like scoreboards. We can get cooperative pricing on scoreboards and things like that. That would be sometimes those specifications are difficult or expensive to write, and it might be hard for us to do the analysis to get all that done. So yeah, we do take advantage probably of the cooperative purchasing. That's certainly not the only benefit to Education Plus, but it's a distinct benefit to our membership.
We also have things, MoReap is a job posting platform that we're able to use through Ed Plus without additional cost to us. Otherwise, we'd have to pay a subscription to do those kinds of things. Through the pandemic as well, they coordinated, you can see in the summary that was provided, mask deliveries. And so we were able to receive several thousand masks at no cost to us through Ed Plus. Not to mention, they were able to coordinate meetings with healthcare providers and things throughout the entire pandemic to help all of us as a group learn the best we could on the decisions we were making. Those are all things that just come as part of our membership, not additional cost.
Any other discussion, board? All right, so I believe the question at hand is a motion to postpone. Jane, if you could read that back. So
Motion to postpone to the next meeting to get a benefit analysis for the renewal of Education Plus membership.
All right. We had a first by Adam Bertrand, and then a second by Randy Cook. By roll call.
Doug Ziegemeyer.
No.
Adam Bertrand.
Aye.
Janet Stiglich.
Nay.
Randy Cook.
Aye.
Patrick Lane. Chad Lane. Mary Lane.
All right, that motion fails. At hand is our first motion to approve a one-year renewal for the Education Plus membership at present. Call to question by roll call.
Adam Bertrand.
Nay.
Janet Stiglich.
Aye.
Randy Cook.
Nay.
Patrick Lane.
Aye.
Chad Lane.
Aye.
Mary Lane. Doug Ziegemeyer.
Aye. Motion passes. Next action item, motion to approve the purchase of 2 new iMacs for middle school Spectre classrooms as presented.
So moved.
First by Chad Lang, second by Patrick Lane. Board, any discussion?
I'm not motioning to postpone this time. But I would say, like, I do not support this. They already have iMacs. They are looking to replace or get replacements for 2 iMacs that were already replaced. And for the amount of cost, the biggest thing is for the amount of cost from our district, that's not one-to-one technology. For the amount of cost that we have here, we could buy 60 Chromebooks if we so chose to do that at a future date. So how can we say one area that already has materials and has materials that they've had for a significant amount of time deserves 2 more iMacs at this kind of cost when the broader district could be benefited by something else.
Do I have a second on that? I'm sorry, we already got a second on that. Any other discussion? No other discussion? Call the question to vote on motion to approve the purchase of the new 2 iMacs for each middle school Spectre classroom as presented. By roll call.
Janet Stiglich.
Aye.
Randy Cook.
Nay.
Patrick Lane.
Aye.
Chad Lane.
Aye.
Mary Lane.
Aye.
Doug Ziegemeyer.
Aye.
Adam Bertrand.
Nay.
Next action item is dealing with banking services. The board, I'd like to entertain a motion to accept the proposal for submitted from UMD Bank as the district depository for a period of 5 years beginning July 1st, 2022.
So moved.
First by Chad Lang, second by Randy Cook. Board, any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Board would like to entertain a motion to accept the resolution urging state senators and state representatives to oppose Senate Bill 649 and/or any related or amended bill version which would phase out or eliminate personal property taxes.
So moved.
I'll second.
I'm sorry.
Okay. Chad Lane first, Patrick Lane second. I'll go ahead and recognize myself first to speak about this since I brought it forward last meeting. As you can see that it's been uploaded, I do apologize for a little bit of the late delay on that, but it's nothing new that hasn't been already being discussed in the community. It's been in the news, it's hit newspapers, other agencies and organizations have passed resolutions very similar to this, so this has been a topic in St. Charles County for some time. And so just wanted to kind of throw that out there. Part of the reason bringing it forward is the time-sensitive nature of that. And so that's what I kind of tried to explain, but probably not so eloquently on Tuesday. There was a lot of expectation that this was going to fail in the Senate. and a part of it got attached to a House bill. So that's my understanding. That's currently sitting somewhere in the House, and so they have action on it. If we delay this resolution, then it may be a moot point if we put it off to a month. And I think most of us up here would probably say we want to stay out of partisan issues, but unfortunately we've kind of been dragged into this partisan issue as a result of how it impacts the district. So there are a lot of negative impacts that happen as a result of this. I don't think anybody in this room probably likes writing a check for property tax. I don't think anybody else does. But if there's such a detrimental effect to the agencies, we're talking municipalities, we're talking fire department, we're talking ambulance, we're talking libraries, we're talking school districts. We can go on and on a little bit with the list there. It impacts them. There's around $100 million is my understanding that is then dispersed as revenue to those agencies throughout the county. That would drastically impact budgets moving forward. Whether we're talking about municipalities, we're talking fire, we're talking school districts. School districts are probably one of the largest ones hit, which is why we, as a board, I would like to stand out and actually advocate for the school district, because we haven't passed a levy, a tax levy, in quite a few years. And so one of those things that helps to keep us afloat is the natural increases that happen through these tax revenue bases. And so eliminating that without any mechanism to replace it, I believe, is malfeasance on the part of our legislation. So that's my opposition towards that. It will drastically affect budgets of our firefighters, of our ambulance, of our teachers, and ultimately impact our students in our classrooms. And so that's obviously not something that is positive for this district. That's why I brought forth the resolution. And so I don't have a lot of numbers to go over with you as one of the patrons requested. What I can tell you is that as the real estate tax increases, property taxes decrease. But as a natural result, those two things stay stagnant. That number is stagnant. It doesn't naturally increase, as every other expense does naturally increase. And so if we expect our budget to stay stagnant and not naturally increase as those other expenses naturally increase, that starts to cause deficits. And so I'm not in favor of supporting this bill. I'm in opposition of this bill. I don't like paying taxes, but we need to know, if we don't like personal property tax, we have to figure out another mechanism to fund our fire, our police, our ambulance, and our teachers, and our school districts, and our libraries before we remove that revenue source. I think there's a lot of deleterious effects that are going to happen as a result of just willy-nilly removing that source of income and not figuring out how we're going to replace it, what we need to do. It just doesn't seem like a logical step for me. So that's part of the reason why I brought it forward. I don't know if there's any other conversation, Chad?
Well, you really said everything that I even had written down, but I just wanted to ask Kevin to weigh in a little bit, who attended some meetings over this with elected officials and the county assessor and other people, for a little insight that we might not be sharing.
Thank you, Mr. Lang. I think it is always an opportunity to take a look at how we fund our public agencies, including school districts. And as Mr. Ziegermeyer said, I don't think that there's anybody who's ready to stand up and say, please tax me a little bit more. But it is, at its, one of the strong points about property taxes in general is that for school districts, it becomes a very stable funding source. So if you think about municipalities who often rely very heavily on sales tax can be impacted very dramatically by changes in the economy. That's very unlikely to happen. The only time I can think of in my 40-plus year career is to look back at the recession of 2008 and 9, where we had an impact on our real estate. And even at that point, for Francis Howell, the provisions within the Hancock Amendment held us pretty steady. So property taxes is a very efficient and stable methodology for funding public entities. Subject to, it's a little bit less regressive than a sales tax and less subject to variation than a sales tax. So while we don't particularly like the concept of a particular tax, be it personal property tax or other, it is a mechanism for providing funding for essential services like fire, and ambulance, and libraries, and the DDRB, et cetera. So for Francis Howell, the impact would be, once the bill was fully implemented, we would not be able to count on $20 million worth of revenue. So that's based on the current value within the school district. So it's a significant amount of money, and without a vehicle to replace it, it would force us to make some very hard decisions. And so I would, it's not my place to take a position on this, but I would say that anybody who will be directing the finances for an organization like a school district or a fire district would need to be naturally concerned about not being able to continue to see revenue growth from what for Francis Howell constitutes about 56% of our operating revenue. For that to remain stagnant over any period of time would certainly be a huge detriment to us to effectively support the programs and services that allow us to offer an excellent education for our kids.
So just to clarify, Mr. Supple, when you say $20 million, is that $20 million in total revenue received from property tax, or you're saying we get $20 million expected increase every year?
Personal property tax contributes $20 million to the total property tax revenue that we receive in any given year.
So for like this bill, it'd be a phase out, so we wouldn't lose all of that.
We wouldn't lose it all at once, but we would eventually lose it.
As it was offset by increases in actual property tax, though.
The increases in property tax would, so if you're, let's make the numbers easy, although this isn't exactly true. If we're getting 100 million and 20 million comes from property tax, and next year, if my natural growth was $5 million, so I'd be getting 105 million. The intent of this bill is I would get $100 million because the $5 million growth, I would reduce my personal property tax by amount that would generate that $5 million. So it wouldn't be 100 million, then 105, then 107, then 112. It would be 100 and 100 and 100 and 100. And so, yes, we would have growth in real property, but it would only offset the revenue that we're losing from the diminution of personal property. So 56% of our revenue would essentially not grow over a significant period of time. And so that would be, I think that would, it's a difficult concept to explain, but that's the easiest way that I can explain it based on what I understand. Our revenue growth would just offset the revenue that we're losing. So essentially we stay flat. The statement has been made, I've heard the statement made, nobody will lose any money. Well, while that's a true statement, I believe it's a misleading statement because it tends you tend to think that there's a good thing there. But the natural growth that we would typically see in our property tax revenue is going to be taken away from us. And that's a very difficult revenue source to replace.
Can I just ask, I know I'll put you on a spot, so you may not have a number for me. Do you know like a 10-year average and what that growth has been year over year on average?
In a reassessment year, we see, so there are two, I want to answer the question two ways. There's growth in the assessed value, but that has, it's not a direct impact. So really, the growth that we see is about 3% in a reassessment year in terms of the revenue. So we get $136 million in property taxes for all of our funds. And so that would tend to grow by about 3% in a reassessment year and by 1.5% or something like that in a non-reassessment year.
So you can say maybe an average between assessment versus non-assessment, 2.5-ish.
Yes.
So this bill would require us either find a way to reduce costs by that every year as other costs increase, or find another way to offset that 2.5% with additional revenue somewhere else.
Yes.
So Chad mentioned you talked with elected officials. What elected officials did you discuss this with?
I was able to attend a meeting of the Public Policy Committee for the St. Charles Regional Chamber, and Senator Eigel was there to make a presentation to that group. So I did have an opportunity to interact directly with Senator Eigel at that meeting. Most recently, the City of St. Peters helped to organize an event where all of the potentially impacted jurisdictions had an opportunity to present. And at that meeting, we had Representative Wyman, Representative Hicks. There were two others, Carvado? There were two other representatives there who represented St. Charles County.
Okay.
So they were there.
Right. If we're going to consider this resolution, I'd like to make a motion to amend the resolution as it's written. Wait a second. Oh, okay. I'll read the whole. Okay. I would like to amend the fourth preambulatory clause to read, whereas the sponsor of Senate Bill 649 has made no claim that legislation as written is revenue neutral and would, therefore, reduce the rate of revenue growth to these political subdivisions in St. Charles County that receive revenue from the personal property tax, and would reduce the overall tax burden on the taxpayers of St. Charles County. I would like to amend the fifth clause to read, whereas real property and personal property are subject to the price fluctuations in the market, and Senate Bill 649 would, over time, effectively eliminate the personal property tax, making real property tax the primary funding source for certain political subdivisions in St. Charles County. I'd like to amend the sixth preambulatory clause to replace the period at the end with a semicolon and add the word and I would like to add a seventh preambulatory clause, whereas the state of Missouri has the third highest personal property tax rate of the 21 states that still collect personal property tax.
Second on that motion?
Second.
Discussion, board?
I'll just say that this is a tax cut, so I've heard it said that it might be revenue neutral. I talked with Senator Eigel. He made it very clear that it is not revenue neutral, as it is a tax cut, and as a result, that political subdivisions have less revenue as a result of that. If it were revenue neutral, we would be playing a shell game. By and large, the voters of our county elected this senator and others who support it, and others who don't support it. By and large, there seems to be a support in our county to have this tax cut. And I think it's incumbent on us as elected representatives of the school board and each political subdivision to make cuts where we need to, even if it's 2% a year, 2.5%, 3%. I believe that's our role if the taxpayers request a tax cut like this. So that's my thoughts on this. I do not support the resolution, but I do think if we're going to read it and do a resolution, I'd like to fix some of the inaccuracies and add a few other statements to it if it's going to be signed.
Any other discussion about the amendment?
I'll just say I supported the amendment just because I think it does more accurately reflect the actual bill. It just makes things a little clearer.
Mr. Supple, just a quick question about discussion about amending this bill in point that was made up about reducing cost and whatnot. We talked about how much that this would impact over maybe a 10-year period, a couple $1 million per year. Some years might be a little bit more significant than others, and then it trails off. So we could see a stagnant revenue source from these two sources over a period of 10, 15 years. We don't exactly know until it actually occurs. That's part of the problem with implementing this. My question is based off all that. What is our normal, if you can kind of snowball it, or ballpark it, I should say, what is our annual increase year after year, just natural increases of expenses?
Recalling that 80% of our budget, a little over 80% of our budget is salaries and benefits. So it's a difficult question to answer exactly because so much is driven by salary. So if we were, but let me try to affect it this way. We typically see costs for providing medical insurance go up in the neighborhood of $1 million a year. We're currently spending $20 million to provide medical insurance for our employees and their dependents. And so now you're talking about reducing maybe $2 million a year. And so I'm losing $2 million and just the natural growth that I see. And remember, we've implemented a number of programs to make our insurance benefit as cost effective as possible and have seen some real benefit as a result of that. But we don't have direct control over the medical cost trends, which have historically exceeded inflation significantly. Now we're seeing normal inflation of 8%. And medical inflation can be expected to exceed that. So if I were looking at this picture, just easy math would be if I lose $2 million a year and I have to spend another $1 million on insurance, I'm really $3 million in the hole just to get started. And I haven't done anything yet to really affect the majority of the 80% of our costs, which is to provide increased salaries for our teachers and our custodians and our paraprofessionals.
Okay, thank you for that answer. Like everybody in this room, I enjoy a tax cut. I just don't know that tax cut or defunding organizations such as the police, fire, education, that ultimately affect our protective services and our education to our kids is a good step forward for a tax cut. Pretty sure Senator Eigel can think of another way to implement a tax cut. I'm pretty sure we have a $1 billion surplus that's been talked about in the news recently. So I am against, I'll just put it out there, I'm against amending this resolution. Any other discussion on the amendment? All right, roll call on the amendment.
I'm sorry, Doug, could we reread the amendment?
Mr. Cook, would you mind?
Yeah. Not too fast.
The amendment is, would like to amend the fourth preambulatory clause to read, whereas the sponsor of Senate Bill 649 has made no claim that the legislation, as written, is revenue neutral and would, therefore, reduce the rate of revenue growth to these political subdivisions in St. Charles County that receive revenue from the personal property tax and would reduce the overall tax burden on the taxpayers of St. Charles County. Amend the fifth preambulatory clause to read, whereas real property and personal property are subject to price fluctuations in the market, and Senate Bill 649 would, over time, effectively eliminate the personal property tax, making real property tax the primary funding source for certain political subdivisions in St. Charles County.
I would like to amend the 6th preambulatory clause to replace the period at the end with a semicolon and add the word and add a 7th preambulatory clause. Whereas the state of Missouri has the 3rd highest personal property tax rate of the 21 states that still collect personal property tax.
Thank you.
Okay, roll call.
Patrick Lane. Chad Lang. Mary Lang. Doug Ziegemeyer.
Nay.
Adam Bertrand.
Aye.
Janet Stiglich.
Nay.
Randy Cook.
Aye.
Motion to amend has failed. Back to the main motion. Any discussion on the main motion? Any further discussion?
Yeah, I would just like to say, I don't like taxes either. I see where you're coming from, but I also don't support this because part of what we aren't saying here is that the bill gives back local control, and it makes us responsible and gives us more responsibility for the school, which I think is a good thing. I think most parents want to see more local control, and it's hard to say that we can't have more, we need more money or we can't have any kind of cuts when the board up here just passed over $150,000 worth of additional items that wouldn't even wait for additional information. And I think that's what Senator Heigl and probably the Missouri State Senate is probably looking, saying, pushing people to their, kind of putting their feet to their fire to say, you guys need to be looking for this stuff and managing money appropriately, or you have the responsibility to go to the people, to go to your communities, and convince them why you need the money.
I think if this was a good bill, then it would be statewide.
I agree with that. I guess if it was such a good thing for everybody, why is it just St. Charles County that's being affected? Our kids are, if we don't get this revenue, our kids are already not getting what they need. We gotta make sure that we ensure that our kids are successful.
Any other discussion? All right, I call to question the original motion. Motion to accept the resolution urging state senators and state representatives to oppose Senate Bill 649 and/or any related or amended bill version which would phase out or eliminate personal property taxes. Roll call.
Randy Cook.
Nay.
Patrick Lane. Chad Lang. Mary Lang. Doug Ziegemeyer.
Aye.
Adam Bertrand.
Nay.
Janet Stiglich.
Motion passes. All right, another action item. Motion to, board, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the Teamsters closure document as presented.
So moved.
First by Janet Stiglich, second by Chad Lang. Board, any discussion?
Mr. Ziegemeyer, may I just say a few things?
Sure.
Thank you. We just wanted to take a moment to thank everyone who participated in the negotiation process. Administration and the Teamsters came together. We opened for salary only this year, and we had some great conversations, really worked collaboratively to address some of the issues that we had in our salary schedule. So we did equalize our salary schedule, making sure that we were going to have consistent step increases. We were able to create a salary schedule that will help us retain and attract great bus drivers and monitors. They are such an important role in getting our students off to a great start every school day and ending their school day. And so we wanted to show our appreciation and value and be competitive in our rates so that we could continue to have the quality staff that we have today. So we are pleased to bring this agreement to you. The Teamsters agreement is on board docs, and the changes are highlighted in yellow for you to see. There is no change in any of the other language. It was just salary that we spoke about. And the Teamsters overwhelmingly ratified the agreement, and we are very pleased to bring this to you for approval and recommend that you approve it this evening.
Board, any questions, discussion?
I'm going to make a motion. I'd like to make a motion, but postpone this. I agree with it in principle, but I would like to postpone it until we see the other contracts to make sure everything fits together cohesively in the budget.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Board discussion on postponement.
I'm not in favor of that. We're late in the year, and Human Resources has 2,500 employees that we have to get contracts to, and everything set up, their insurance, their employment, their placement, and it has to be done now. My 5 years on the board, I've not seen where Teamsters get a dime and support staff gets a penny. We always try to equalize to make sure that we give the best that we can opportunity for all staff. That would be Teamsters, then our support staff, and our teachers. And so I think we need to move ahead so that Human Resources can move ahead and complete all the paperwork that needs to be completed for this year, for next year with this particular group.
My question is, what would we gain by postponing it? It's already been negotiated. It's already been ratified. What would we gain by postponing it?
Yeah, my only concern is there's a clause in there basically saying based on everything working out, and so I just want to make sure we don't have to come back to them after the fact, and that we have everything worked out and the finalized budget, we can kind of ratify everything together and say everything's good, everything works out, we're good, rather than approving it, telling them they're going to get something for sure, and then having to come back later if something didn't work out. Because there's a clause in there, I didn't find it, basically saying we can come back if the budget doesn't like align or something. I'd have to find it.
Mr. Zigmeyer, I can share that we did receive board direction on what the board was comfortable with as far as salary increases for next year, and administration is working through that and making sure that the total package, and as we negotiate, will stay within that board direction. I can share that with you as we work forward. I think it's important that we show value and appreciation to the process. And to our Teamsters who have worked very hard, came to the negotiation table early, worked with us to create this package, and I think it will show that we our commitment to our word as we work through that negotiation process. If you were to approve this evening.
Okay, thanks. I'll speak to this amended motion just briefly. I appreciate being new. I was a new guy 2 years ago, so some things you gotta catch up on and understand, but the system and the process of education in this district doesn't just stop because 2 new board members got elected. And so part of the problem with stopping and holding and doing all these different things and looking in and doing a cost analysis here when it's been done in the past and then doing another one over here, it shuts it completely down. We have intelligent people that are experts in their field. I'm not the smartest person in this room. I'm often not the smartest person in the room. I don't expect to be the smartest person, but what I can do is find out and get that information from the people that are the experts in the room and make a logical conclusion and decision. That being said, education is not my expertise. They have been doing this. So these different systems that we want to stop and look at and analyze, that's fine. We just can't stop everything all at once. Transparency and looking at things and coming and trying to figure out if we want to actually revamp something, those are all good things, but progress still has to happen. We can't just cut everything off and then not move forward. Dr. Ramos.
I'd also like to add, in addition to the comment about human resource getting the contracts out, we are in an incredibly tight labor market across all employee groups. And by delaying this 1 month or 2 months, we do run the risk of our drivers and monitors pursuing opportunities elsewhere when we're not able to provide them with a wage letter right now, letting them know what the anticipated compensation would be next year. Although this does increase the current schedule, we also recognize that the comparisons that we build our schedules upon are based upon this year's schedules. So other districts right now are negotiating and changing their schedules as well. So the longer we wait, will potentially have an impact on us losing that. This is one of the employee groups this year that we've been fortunate with our drivers to be almost fully staffed the entire year. We do recognize the importance that we have not had any delays in getting our students to school, where neighboring districts this year have had to put out information that potentially students would not have arrived to school, would arrive late, and we've not been in that situation. So just understanding that our employees, as they're weighing all the options for employment next year, we want to retain and attract the best employees to Francis Howell. So recognizing that approving this tonight will, at least for one employee group, allow us to move forward while we work through the process with the other two associations. And any delay could negatively impact that.
Thank you for all the commentary. I would like to withdraw my motion.
We need a second. We need a second. We need a second to withdraw.
The second has to agree. Yeah.
I agree. All right. Amendment or postponement withdrawn. So back to the main motion. Any discussion on the main motion?
I would like to reiterate what Ms. Simpkins said. I was the board member that was part of that negotiation team. I would like to thank Teamsters and our administrative staff for being as collaborative as they were. I thought it was done very well, and I was very impressed with both sides.
I would just like to add a thank you to the Teamsters. I heard that the negotiations was fairly amicable, so thank you for your hard work and dedication, and I look forward to this passing. Call question by roll call.
Patrick Lane. Chad Lane. Mary Lane. Doug Ziegemeyer.
Aye.
Adam Bertrand.
Aye.
Janet Stiglich.
Aye.
Randy Cook.
Aye.
All right, I believe we're taking a quick recess to sign the documents.
It's kind of a reason why I kept it. No, I wasn't. That's smart. Honestly, there was, I don't know if you know this, there were some people who were That's kind of like I don't know if I watched the testimony and then decided well, you know, we would have had something that was tight, but we throw it in on it was it was like that. Do you think that it would be just a little bit. Do we not so we don't So we don't like go down there on December. Little support, little love it. Yeah, so I'll walk.
And it's just like, oh, we were
All right, everybody, we're going to get started back again so we can get out of a decent time. Hey, Marie, can you grab Janet?
Can you grab Janet outside?
Oh, yes.
All right, Board, I would like to move on to the next action item. Board, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the additional 1.5 FTE for certified staffing for the 2022-2023 school year as presented.
Second.
All right, we have a first by Randy Cook and a second by Chad Lang. Any discussion, or Ms. Simpkins first?
Thank you. The 1.5 positions that we're asking for the board to approve tonight will be funded by ESSER funds. This will allow us to support students and address learning loss across the district by implementing a data-driven, problem-solving framework that will allow us to provide some interventions to our students. So that is the 0.5. And the 1.0 position will come out of our special education ESSER funds to support some increased enrollment at one of our middle schools for students with special needs so that we can manage our caseloads for our teachers in that building a little better.
Any discussion, Board? All right.
Lisa, would you quickly explain to Adam and Randy that we approve staffing in January, but sometimes we have to make amendments to that? Why only 1.5 when we approve staffing for
Sure,
next year?
we start our staffing process in October of each year. Mr. Delaney and I visit with each building. We talk with building principals, district directors to try to gauge what is needed in the building. We also ask the board and talk about some financial situations to know what kind of direction we have going into the staffing season. And then we present a staffing plan to the board, typically either in December or January in workshop to really work through what we expect our plans to be for the new school year, and then bring that back the next month for approval so the board has some opportunity to really see it, reflect on it, and ask questions before the vote. We do all of that based on projections pretty early on. Having the staffing plan in place allows us then to let our buildings know what staffing they will have for the new school year. They can start using that and student enrollment to kind of figure out what positions they're going to need. And then we post our positions in early March and really start that hiring process. We used to be very early in that process and really got to get ahead of other school districts when we were posting positions in early March. I think they're catching up with us, realizing that we were stealing all the great high-quality teachers, because most districts now are kind of following the same timeline that we are. But because we do that a little early, there are some things that may come up throughout the rest of the school year. We do ask for some contingency staffing to be able to react to emergency needs. So if we get into July or early August and see that a 5th grade classroom has more students than what we expected and is getting close to those maximum numbers, then we can quickly use that contingency staffing to address that. But here, this was a little different. We were using ESSER funds, so there is no change to the salary budget for the district. And we didn't want to utilize that emergency funds, or those emergency contingency staffing. We really just wanted to come to the board and share the need and explain the position so that we could have those FTEs approved and added to our staffing plan.
Any other discussion, board? All right, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. One final action item. Board, I'd like to motion to approve the substitute teacher pay schedule as presented. First by Chad Lang and second by Adam Bertrand. Ms. Simpkins?
Thank you. I'm excited to bring this recommendation to you, board. We have been focused on substitute teacher no-fills, and what that means is when a teacher is absent and we look to find a substitute teacher to fill that position, we struggle to find them and a position goes unfilled. And so what has been happening over the course of several years is that our teachers are pulled from their plan time to cover a class. Our paraprofessionals are pulled from the work that they're asked to do each day to cover a class. Students are funneled, maybe separate, which means separated. One class of 3rd grade students might be split up and given to other 3rd grade teachers throughout the building. It is a significant stress and a lot of work on our teachers and our staff. Reading teachers might be pulled from providing reading services to students so that they can cover a classroom. It has become a problem, not just for Francis Howell, but for districts across the state and across the nation. We noticed the no-fills back in the 2015-2016 school year when we started to see that on average we had 3 positions going unfilled every day, and that alarmed us back then. And we have tried strategy after strategy after strategy to address that situation. And while I can't say that any one of them was the magic bullet, I think that our focus and our intention on the issue kept our no-fills lower than what some of our neighboring districts have seen. The last increase that we provided to our substitute teacher rate of pay was for the 18-19 school year. We went from $90 to $95. And then in the 19-20 school year, instead of increasing that daily rate, we kind of created a system to try to focus and encourage our substitutes to only work in Francis Howell. So if they worked 30 days, then their rate would increase. After 60 days, their rate increased. And we did see some success. However, where we are now in next school year, we haven't increased our rate now or any changes to our rate in the last 2 years. And we're getting outpaced by some of our benchmark districts. Substitutes can go over to Fort Zumwalt or Wentzville or St. Charles and spend their time there. And so we want to be a little more competitive in that starting rate as substitutes come to work in Francis Howell. So we are asking that you increase that daily rate and then that leveled pay that we provide to our substitutes. We expect that the increased cost would be about $100,000 to our overall salary budget when we look at the number of absences that we had this school year, and using that rate compared to those same number of absences using the proposed rates. And so we expect it to be about $100,000. That's very hard to estimate as we don't know the number of absences and how many times substitutes will work in Francis Howell, but we do think that that's a good guesstimate to that time. So we are hopeful that increasing the rate of pay from $95 to $105 will help us attract those substitutes. It is a change for us. Our substitute teachers, when they earned $95 and if they worked during the teacher plan time that they had scheduled, would receive an extra $15. We've removed that provision and just incorporated that into the daily rate of pay. Our substitutes will now work that full 7-hour day. They'll still get their lunch break, but on that teacher plan time, they'll be expected to write notes to the teacher or to prepare for the next lesson, or they could be asked to come out of their classroom and cover in another position that might have gone unfilled. And so that $15 will be incorporated into that rate of pay for all of our substitute teachers, which also allows our payroll department and our substitute office a little less manual work in the processes that they're following. So we're very hopeful that this is the next strategy in combating the no-fill issues that we're seeing, and will hopefully reduce some stress on our teachers as we can fill those vacancies when they do need to take a day away from work.
Board, any discussion? All right. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, that's all for the action items. On to superintendent comments. Dr. Hogan.
Thank you. I'll keep it brief tonight. I just want to take this chance to officially welcome our 2 new board members. As you can see, we've got lots of work to do, all for kids, and looking forward to working together to make those things happen.
Any comments from the board, requests?
Thank you.
I want to commend the team. Katie and her friends have developed the Build My Future St. Louis at the Family Arena. I went, I didn't know I was supposed to go up front and walked around, but it was excellent. Lots of the construction industry, the union industry, companies were there to have our students walk around and get a feel for careers after graduating from high school. I think they had 40 to 50 vendors inside the stadium and out on the parking lot. I don't know who else went, probably about 20. So there was a wide variety of items for them to see, and Katie and her team spearheaded this event and brought it to St. Louis for the first time. It was excellent.
I just wanted to publicly welcome Randy and Adam to the board, and also that I had the joy of participating this morning in the superintendent level interviews for the new CFO. It was down to 2 people, and I think whichever one rises to the top, we're going to be in pretty good hands.
Board, any other comments? All right, and for curriculum, there was a first read that was added to the agenda. And then that will be back for next meeting. And board, I'd like a motion to enter back into closed session.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, first was Janet Stigledge and second was Adam Burgess.